Due to the big size of Devon's hand, it forces his pronation to compensate for the larger distance between the rotation center and the point of force application, in other words, torque. The larger the hand becomes, the more torque it puts on the pronation muscles and the ulnar ligament. Try to belt pronate 5 kilos, it's easy. Now, try to belt pronate the same weight with a towel between your thumb and the belt. The weight becomes more challenging, considering the towel is part of your hand and adds to the size of it. So, having a bigger hand is advantageous for you, of course, but it slightly gives you less room to pronate. But it's unsensible. It's only obvious on the micro level. The advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Every time I see someone grips Devon, he forces his opponents to grip him low, due to his strong rising ability. This considerable amount of torque on his wrist has conditioned his ulnar ligament and gave it the possibility of stretching beyond its limit. Sometimes his wrist gets supinated slightly, but his arm stays intact. And yes, wrist spinning is possible without the rotation of the entire arm. As long as his riser is active, pronating won't be an issue. Riser is the weakest link in the chain. When it survives, the rest of the chain will survive too. Riser forces the opponent to make the match about hand and wrist, where Devon is nearly unbeatable. And second thing is that riser has no counter. Devon calls it the concept of not holding on. Even though Devon is all about height and griping high, he still grips normal grip slightly low. This grip requires more pronation because the pronation, the part that is transmitted through the index and middle fingers, is attacking a thicker portion of the opponent's hand. So he normally uses this type of grip for riser stabilization rather than pronation. As long as the riser is sound, the pronation will be untouched because the riser protects it. We all witnessed Devon's hand size growth that he has experienced recently. Well, everyone will say it's because of pancakes, it's true, but this is the easy part that requires no much intelligence and hard work. The real deal is about how effective your training approach is. Because in arm wrestling, every individual has his own training methodology. Devon is super heavyweight. All the hands he grips with are gigantic, so it's reasonable to stimulate their hand by using a 3 inches diameter multi-spinner. It's true that pronation force is conveyed through the thumb and knuckle. The multi-spinner forces your wrist to transmit the force through the top 2 fingers. He's been using the multi-spinner for his entire life, so his fingers, other than the thumb, are also conditioned perfectly. The ring and pinky fingers are used for stabilization during a fingertop roll. And that's one of the reasons why Devon is now focusing on increasing his grip strength. You can pronate through the top knuckle or the thumb, or the wrist. Try them out and you'll notice some are more comfortable than others or feel like they hit your muscles differently. One thing about the thumb is if you squeeze it in tight while pronating, it provides a little extra resistance against losing pronation. You either use the wrist flexion muscles for squeezing the fingers or cupping the wrist. When you grip low, you're making the fingers a limiting factor before the wrist. In contrast, the high grip doesn't utilize much finger strength, so they won't be a limiting factor, but the cup will. Now it's obvious why it's nearly impossible to close Captain of Crush with a flexed wrist. Pronation of the hand involves 2 muscles primarily, the pronator teres, which everyone calls the pronator, the muscle near your elbow, and the brachioradialis muscle. When pronating from a palm-up position to a neutral position, and not deliberately keeping your elbow from flexing, the muscle primarily responsible for this is the brachioradialis, not the pronator teres. Most exercises people do for pronation involve elbow flexion, such as pronation curls with a strap. The brachioradialis is the primary mover in this case. The only way to properly emphasize the pronator teres is with sideways pronation movements. This is difficult to do without a pulley or some other specialized machine. That's not to say that your pronator teres aren't working at all with a pronation curl, but you're just not going to get too much stimulation or a pump in it with that exercise. The pronator is most engaged in the neutral to fully protonated range of motion. It's far less engaged once your hand starts to get turned over. It's like training your back pressure. Doing a full range of motion curls isn't the answer. Doing pronation from fully supinated to neutral is a lot like doing curls from the arm fully extended to 90 degrees and then back down. Pronation gets a lot harder once your hand starts to turn into the belt and your palm is facing away from you. Isometrics are notably gentler on connective tissues, hence their prioritization in rehabilitation. They prove advantageous for those seeking strength gains and peak performance without significant weight increase to meet certain criteria. For replicating arm wrestling movements, plyometrics reign supreme. These explosive actions elongate tendons, enhancing strength, rigidity, and ultimately reducing soreness over time. Plyometrics enable you to momentarily surpass your muscle's maximum load capacity, even when training with moderate weights, effectively training beyond your 1 repetition maximum. This is the essence of a speed day in the conjugate method. Although static pronation entails a rotational force that does affect pronators to some degree, it's not the primary factor. Locked pronation lifts offer superior precision in pronation expression during matches, making them preferable for cultivating movement patterns and coordination. Pronation is the fastest route to the pin, and is just naturally the optimal way to attack an arm. The closer you go to the top of the lever, the less force it has. Same reason you climb the hand to get over a king's move. The more force is applied towards the fingers, top of the hand, the easier it will be forced out of position. So moving up the arm, into the hand, and breaking the wrist integrity basically destroy the leverage of the arm. So again, it's the most natural way to overcome the arm you are pulling, compared to pulling through the person's arm while pulling parallel to the ground. Super heavyweights are slow and can't shoot a hook fast enough. Plus, referees allow too much loading. Lighter weights have an equal amount of hookers. Plus, I think it's because the current training methods emphasize back pressure and pronation, but don't emphasize triceps and supination. Posting top rollers are a dime a dozen at the super heavyweight division. A hook is a natural counter, but triceps and supination is an essential part of that. Devon is amazingly strong in specific angles and positions. The main idea is the ability to get into these positions. The pronation lift angle might seem normal and nothing special about it. But in reality, putting the belt around the thumb distributes the force between the knuckle and wrist line. When the opponents take grip, they wrap their fingers around these 2 lines of pronation application.
See how it kicks back a little bit? Yeah. A little bit, and lean back, and bang. That's it, that's your lift.
The Devon Levon arm wrestling match has me on the edge of my seat with anticipation. After witnessing Devon's injury in their previous encounter, I am thrilled to see him back in action, fully recovered and ready to take on Levon. Devon's determination and dedication to his craft have been evident in his training, and it is clear that he is prepared to give Levon a run for his money. The atmosphere surrounding this match is electric, as fans eagerly await the clash between these 2 titans of arm wrestling.